Hello, this is my final project for multimodal composing. The title is Self-Care and the Pursuit of Passion. So my challenge statement is I'll use the design thinking process to create an experience around personal self-care improvement in the form of my passion of creative writing. So self-care and creative writing. So creative writing has always been a passion of mine. Um, it acts as an expression of feelings and it can be an act of self-care. I like to think of writing as kind of like a metamorphosis of thought to emanation. And emanation is a version of the word emanate, which is derived from the Latin word emanare, which means to flow from or to pour out of. So if you think of it as like your thoughts pouring out onto the page. Um, but the act of writing about everyday life, fiction, or just my feelings, it kind of acts as a form of therapy. The problem is, though, that my failure to write lately has kind of taken a toll on my mental health. So the implementation of the design thinking process to this problem. So in this experience or this slideshow, I will be discussing how I did apply the design thinking process to reinvigorate my motivation to write, therefore improving my mental health. But first we have to go through what the design thinking process is. So the design thinking process is basically if you have a problem, you can use this process and apply it to find a solution. And so it's made of 6 steps. It's made of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and implement. And so empathize is basically identifying the problem and finding out as much as you can about it, either from your experience or from other people who have experienced. And it depends on the problem, but if you don't experience the problem but you want to solve it, you kind of have to empathize with other people and figure out, okay, like I understand where you're coming from. Maybe we can solve the issue this way or another way. Define is actually defining the problem at hand and identifying the main problem and why or how it occurs. Ideate, you begin to think of ideas for solving the issue. So in this stage, your ideas are extensively discussed with the other people that are involved, and you refine your ideas. Prototype is where you bring your ideas and you make it physical. So you bring the ideas to fruition and you construct a trial version of the solution. And then test is where you actually test that prototype. And from testing that, you collect feedback from the results and you refine the problem and essentially the prototype. And you kind of reorganize the needs of the person who's encountering it, whether it's you or another person. You kind of just you go over everything after you tested it and maybe you improve or you take things away, add something. And then implement is implementing the finished product to this or solution to the problem. From the results, you identify any corrections that need to be made, if any, and you apply them. So the use of the design thinking process for my problem. So empathize. So the mental health hasn't been the greatest, and I believe that it's because I haven't been able to write lately. And due to not being able to write, I lack my form of, say, like escapism. And so to define the problem, my main problem is because I haven't been able to write lately. And the reasons I've come to identify are a lack of motivation, a lack of inspiration, and writer's block. When I try to force myself to write, it doesn't flow as easy as usual, and it just feels forced. Though it could be a form of deliberate practice, it just does not feel right. And I also just find myself editing the work a lot more than I usually would. So I try not to force myself because then I just get mad and I don't know. So ideate. An idea that I think I could benefit from would be to maybe search harder for inspiration through even intrinsic motivation. So think about why I write and think deeply about the reasons that writing does help me. Another idea that could possibly help would be through exposure to videos on the internet, like how to seek inspiration videos on YouTube, and TED Talks about writing and inspiration given by authors and people with valuable lessons. It doesn't have to be even just authors. It can be just people with valuable lessons about creativity. I could try to learn more about writer's block and through understanding it, and maybe even learn a way out from the videos as well. So through deliberate practice, I can force myself to write, even if it's just the simplest of things, just to get in the habit of writing consistently. The writing that I do through the deliberate practice doesn't have to be good in my eyes, but it could just be just a way of getting back in like a habit or a routine and just becoming familiar with the writing again, like just the feeling of it. And another way of finding inspiration, I can force myself to even like read some of like the book that I haven't read in a while, or watch a movie that I've been wanting to watch but haven't seen yet, and just take inspiration from there. So prototype. So as a prototype, to transform these ideas into a physical construction to follow, I can create maybe like a schedule or a guideline to follow each day in order to break through the barriers that have been holding me back. Um, in the guideline that I'm using as a prototype, I'll include daily activities and weekly activities. So they're for daily activities, it'll be stuff that I have to set for the day and do those every day. And weekly, it'll be things that I could fit in my everyday life, but every day is different. You might not be able to fit it in. Um, and over the course of a week, everybody finds some extra free time. Um, so I'll set some objectives to hit for the week. Using the guideline, I'll make sure that I complete the objectives, and hopefully it'll lead me into the habit of writing. It'll give me inspiration and insight to understand writing and writer's block. So on the right is a prototype of a checklist and guide, well, checklist or guideline that I plan to follow over the course of 2 weeks. It consists of things to take inspiration from and just deliberate practice exercises like a nightly passage to write, just to get myself in the habit of writing. So test. I've tested the guideline over 2 weeks, and I followed almost every task, and my ability to creatively write has been on the upturn. I successfully followed the tasks, and although my writing isn't as satisfactory as I'd want it, it doesn't really feel like a chore anymore. So, due to the deliberate practice I've been putting myself through, I no longer am reluctant to just sit down and write anymore. It's just become part of my day. I don't get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, like, should I write? No, I don't feel like it, and I don't feel bad about it because it's already part of my day. Reading passage, like reading 10 pages of my book every day, which was included in the guideline, um, I've been able to find inspiration through the things that I haven't in so long. And just reading from the book, especially if it's only like 10 pages a day, you can gain inspiration through like the perspective and the stories and or the perspective of the characters in the story and just like the plot of the overarching of what you're reading, you can even take inspiration from that. I'm also receiving the same feeling from my daily walks. As I walk, I think about average thoughts throughout the day at first, but after a little bit, you think differently and you kind of get more creative in your thoughts. Um, you can even like make stories. Like I'll think about just like random stuff and I'll make up like just some random story. Um, and I'll just like look at objects and everyday things in a different light. As for the weekly activities on the guideline, watching TED Talks has given me some inspiration to take from. They taught me to look for, find, and use inspiration from things that I would have never even thought to have looked at. Watching two movies I haven't seen each week is also something very reinvigorating. I have seen a lot of movies though, so it has been difficult to watch two new movies each week, but I'm getting through it. Being placed in the perspectives of characters and investing in their stories is very inspiring for my writing, and not just the characters and the stories, but like even the I don't know, just like the artwork and how the movie is set up is very inspiring. You could take a lot of inspiration from just how a movie is filmed and just the shots that they have in the movie. And lastly, watching videos and reading articles about writer's block has led me to understand the concept. I now know what it is and why it happens and how to try and get over the obstacle. For some people, it's easier to get over writer's block, and for some people, it's harder. So I'm still kind of applying myself and trying to get over it, but I have made some progress. So tests the feedback and improvements to make. So taking a daily walk can be cumbersome and it can be difficult to find the time each day. Especially if you're doing a walk every day, you don't really walk in the like you don't want to walk in the same place every single day. So like if you're like driving somewhere to walk, um, especially like if it has to be at least an hour, that can take up a lot of time of your day. And sometimes, some days you have that time, and some days you just don't. So that was one of the things where I kind of would miss 1 or 2 days of, but just because I didn't have the time. But I'm either thinking of keeping that in or taking it away. Um, it really comes down to if I think I can consistently keep up with it for that. If I want to keep it in that daily kind of compartment or category. And watching 2 movies each week, it can have its pros and cons. If the movies are not done very well, it can be difficult to take inspiration from them. So you really got to watch like which movies you do pick. Um, and just because a movie is like regarded like popularly, that doesn't always mean it's a good movie. So it's kind of up to you as a person if you think it'll be a good movie. But sometimes you just get unlucky. So I'm thinking about keeping that in. I might not take it out. Um, I'm still on the fence about it. And placing myself in a new social setting, um, it can be a very broad task. And I feel like it's not only is it difficult to gain a person's perspective off meeting them just once, but it's also very easy to put yourself in a new social setting. So I'm planning on removing that from that list. So implement. So after implementing the final product as seen on the right, with slight changes from the prototype, I believe it's been a success. After continuously applying myself to this list, I've been able to overcome writer's block, and I've been able to write as I was before. Using the design thinking process, it helped me extraordinarily improve my writing as well as get back to my usual self in writing terms. I've always noticed that because I am back to my writing, or back to writing my feelings, the stories I've created, and mundane daily activities, my mental health's on the rise and I am feeling better. The results of using this guideline has affected me immensely, both in the writing sense and in the health sense. Here are some results from my implementation. It's really just, those aren't the daily writings, but those are the writings that I've included um, just from since I've stopped the guideline, because it's gotten me, in a sense, back to writing again. So there's some of the proof. And so the outcome. So this is my detailed reflection. Using the design thinking process has allowed me to overcome writer's block and relearn my passion of creative writing. So by empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, testing, and implementing, I've been able to not only gain inspiration and solve my writing problem, but also my mental health as well. Creating this project has shown me the true strength of this process and how it can be used for multiple types of problems and mediums. And you can use this process for not just personal problems, but you can use it for fixing something physical or fixing something else, or you can really use it for any time that there's a problem because you're thinking about the problem, you come up with ideas, you try it. If it doesn't work, you try something else or try fixing your kind of prototype. And you can use it for, like I said, a lot of things. And also putting my actions into words and then onto a page or slideshow with images and narration has been an interesting and valuable lesson. I've never used narration for a slideshow, but I'm very sure that it's going to be helpful in the future and it's a very valuable lesson. Thank you.